What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Geeky Investor, where stocks talk and we translate. Today, we're going to be talking about the semiconductor stocks overall and the sector overall, and then we're going to dig deep on AMD's Q4 2025 earnings call because we're going to have very nice and interesting financial outlook and a stock performance outlook for AMD. So make sure you stick till the end of the video because it's really going to be an informative one. So let's begin with the overall semiconductor story. So the global semiconductor sales is expected to hit 1 trillion in 2026, and that's a very big number as compared to 800 billion almost in 2025. So as we can see right here, we expect almost 20% increase in the semiconductor sales in 2026. So that's a nice place. That's mainly driven by AI, 5G, 6G, autonomous vehicles, and Internet of Things demand. So this number actually it kind of could change potentially from one source to the other. It all depends on how you're kind of framing these expectations. So the booming AI demand is one thing. However, on the other side, we have the potential, supply chain disruptions, the China-US conflict thing that's happening. And you also have capacity constraints are the key challenges that are expected for 2026 and beyond. So we also have Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company still remains to be core to AI chip supply. And we're going to see here a couple of stocks that we're going to have to focus on and keep a close eye, including Nvidia, for example. As you can see, the share price over the last 1 month, as you can see, the price has almost increased like 5%. It's kind of, more or less on the upward trend. The same is happening to these other stocks. Now, if we look at Qualcomm, it kind of is an opposite picture. As you can see, it's down 7%, and over the last year, Qualcomm is down 17% with a PE of 29. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye, although the business is something important to also look at. So Broadcom is also another company. As you can see, that over the last 6 months, it's up 9%, and over the last month, it's kind of, hovering at the same place. As for ARM, which, as a matter of fact, if you guys remember, Nvidia tried to purchase this company a couple of years ago, and as we can see over the last year, it's down 20%, and despite that, the PE is almost 170. So keep a close eye on that. And then you also have ASML with a PE of 50 at the current prices, but if you look at the past year, as you can see, it's up almost 100%. That's a phenomenal growth for this particular company. And then finally, we all know TSMC, which is a very essential and important player in this market. And over the past 5 years, as we can see, the stock is up more than 350% if you look at the lows in 2022, when we had a lot of very nice buying opportunities. Now, if we go back to these highlights, so now broad market semiconductor stocks, those that we just talked about, remain key watch list names as AI capital expenditure drives sector strength. And as we just said in our last video, we know that AI capital expenditure is so large that some people are saying maybe the operating income would kind of be kind of on par or maybe on the negative side, and that's very worrisome for these companies because it's going to put a lot of pressure because it's going to be depreciated and amortized over the next couple of years, the next couple of quarters, and this would lead to low profit margins for such companies. Now, we also have a positive tailwind, including AI infrastructure demand is the main growth engine. Data centers, generative AI, and advanced compute chips are cornerstones of the bull case, as we all know. Now, if we look at AMD 2025 earnings call, I'm going to dig deep on a few key highlights that I really found interesting for advanced micro devices. Now, this is taken from me when I listened to the earnings call. The key highlights I copied and pasted from the earnings call transcript because I was listening to Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, and it was really interesting what she was saying. I'm going to show it right here because it's going to affect, what's our expectations for the share price right here. As we can see, the price is sitting at 200. I'm, guys, loading the boat. Of course, you'll have to do your own research and your own studies on that, but that's my own personal opinion. And as always, please make sure you do your own research. Now, let's see here. So in server, adoption of the 5th gen EPYC turn CPUs accelerated in the quarter Q4 2025, accounting for more than half of the total server revenue. And looking ahead now for 2026, server CPU demand remains very strong, and that's a key component for AMD. So remember, AMD is not just competing with Nvidia in one place, but it's also on the CPU's side as well. And that's a very key part that AMD is also working on. And remember that the CPU part is something that is kind of like a hot news right now on the semiconductor side. So this is really essential for the company. If they achieve very strong numbers there, that will drive the overall revenues and profits, which will eventually lead to good appreciation in the stock price. Now, today, 8 of the top 10 AI companies use Instinct to power production workloads across a growing range of use cases. With the MI350 series, we are entering the next phase of Instinct adoption, and that's really nice. This next phase is essential. If AMD is able to pull these new customers and kind of, attract some new customers, then that's really strong for their base, which will eventually help them for MI400 and MI450, and then later on for MI500, which is going to be the deal breaker in my personal opinion. Now, expanding our footprint with existing partners and adding new customers. And then Lisa Su goes on to say, in addition to our multi-generation partnership with OpenAI to deploy 6 gigawatts, which we all know, of Instinct GPUs, we are in active discussions with other customers. And guys, just imagine, we don't know the exact details here, but other customers could include Meta, for example, Microsoft, and these other hyperscalers, on at scale multi-year deployment. That's a multi-year, guys. So if you look at AMD in the next 3 to 5 years, it all depends on the execution of the CEO and the employees right there. Because in my personal opinion, the next 3 to 5 years are going to be phenomenal for this company. And starting with the Helios and MI450 later this year in 2026. Just imagine, MI450 is coming in 2026. Now, there are some rumors that are saying that MI450 could potentially be delayed. However, nothing is yet confirmed. In my personal opinion, Lisa Su overall does very well on her promises. And then in January 2026, Lenovo announced plans to offer Helios racks. So now we were just discussing, with other customers at scale, multi-year deployments. Then as you can see, Lenovo is one of those. But then Lenovo is just one that is already announced. But we know many other companies are kind of discussing with AMD. However, we don't know the details and we don't know which companies are. So looking further ahead, the development of our next gen MI500 series is well underway. So guys, MI500, if you look at that, what's going to be happening? What's going to be happening to the share price right here? Do you really expect the price to be at 200? No way, in my opinion. If the market is not crashing by that time, you're going to be seeing AMD more than 400 and 500, 600, and maybe even up to 1000 by 2029 if things go well for this company. We'll see. But MI500 is powered by our CDNA 6 architecture built on advanced 2 nanometer, guys, just 2 nanometer process technology, and features high-speed HBM4E memory. And now AMD is on track to launch MI500 in 2027. That was really nice to hear Lisa Su confirming that number, and then expect MI500 to deliver another major leap in AI performance to power the next wave of large-scale multimodal models. So of course, we're not expecting AMD to kind of erode all of Nvidia's position. However, just taking 5 to 10% of that share with margin expansion and with revenue scaling and at that fast clip, then we're going to expect the profits to go sky high and then the share price to go sky high as well. Now, based on the strengths of our EPYC and Instinct roadmaps, we are well positioned to grow data center segment revenue by more than 60% annually over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's a compounded annual growth rate of 60%. You never see these numbers, 60% compounded for the next 3 to 5 years. That's a phenomenal number. And scale our AI business to tens of billions in annual revenue in 2027. And that's just the AI business part, which is mainly what they're talking about is the data center segment. So we're going to have tens of billions. So maybe that's 30 up to 70 billion US dollars just for data center revenues for AMD. And or in 2026, we expect semi-custom SoC annual revenue to decline. That's unfortunate because we know by a significant double-digit percentage as we enter the 7th year of what has been a very strong console year. or for 2026, we expect semi-custom SoC annual revenue to decline by a significant double digit as we enter the seventh year. That's kind of a kind of a two times. However, I wanted to highlight that it's, since this is the seventh year, the revenues are expected. Nobody's going to be buying that Xbox, right? But we expect the year after that, when the new Xbox comes, then what's going to happen to the revenues of that particular segment? Now, here is the very important and essential component that I was talking about. So marking the start of the new growth trajectory for the company AMD. We are entering a multi-year, guys. Just focus on the word multi-year, okay? Multi-year demand super cycle, and Lisa Su is always very accurate with what she says, for high performance and AI computing that is creating significant growth opportunities across each of our businesses. And then looking further ahead, we see a clear path to achieve an ambitious target we laid at our Financial Analyst Day in November 2025. I also saw that, however, I didn't make a video on that, which included growing revenue at greater than 35% compounded annual growth rate over the next 3 to 5 years. So, if you see AMD's actual revenues as of right now. So I'm going to be showing their current revenues. So if you go to stockanalysis.com, and then if you go to the income statement, we can see that the revenue for 2025 was almost $35 billion. Now, if you take that and make it a compounded annual growth rate of 35% over the next 3 to 5 years, then what do you see this number at? So within 5 years, at 35% is more than 2x of the current numbers, and then significantly expanding operating margins. So guys, just look at the operating margin right here. So if you look at the AMD's operating margin, and as you can see, in 2025, the operating margin is almost 8%, 7%, 9%, kind of hovering at that place. But if you look back in 2021 and 2022, the margins were almost 20%. So my personal opinion is that the margins will go up to 20 or even higher percent for AMD. And now, if we have a margin of 8% now, expected to increase to 20%, that's more than 2x increase in the profit margins or the operating margins. And then if you have a 2x in operating margin, and then 2 to 3x for revenues, then what do you expect the share price will happen to that, or the earnings per share? That's more than 5x, and our current valuation, our current share price is almost $200. So 5x from here is almost 1,000 US dollars for AMD by maybe 2029, 2030, maybe even 2028. Okay, so that's a very, very nice profit. As you can see, 5x within 3 to 5 years. That's a very, very, very strong number. So that's the base case. Well, you can also put a range for the bull case, and for the bear case, but that's the gist of the idea. All right. So, and then generating annual EPS of more than $20 in the strategic time frame, driven by growth in all of our segments and the rapid scaling of our data center and AI business. So that's an EPS of 20. So if you go back to stockanalysis.com, and as I just showed you guys here, if you look at the income statement, okay, if you go to the earnings per share, it's 2.6. If you increase that to 20, that's almost that's an 8 times increase, okay? It's 7 to 8 times. And then what do you expect the share price to do? 7 to 8 times increase. That's a potential one. However, AMD's price to earnings ratio of 76 is a bit too stretched, by that time. So maybe a price to earnings ratio of 35, 40, 30. That's an interesting point. So as you can see, if you have an 8 times increase in the earnings per share, but you almost have a half of that in the PE, so you have a grand total of almost 4 to 5 times increase in the share price. And that's what I expect. Why I expect AMD to reach around 800 to 1,200 by 2029, 2030. So that's almost a 5x if we take an average of that over the next 5 years. So that's a very nice number, and that's a very nice profit for any investor to kind of do. So that's a very high hyper scale that is happening to this particular stock, in my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think with this particular valuation, if you agree with that or not. And if you don't, let me know why you don't think this is happening and your expected share price for 2030. And I'll see you in our next video.